So it's always important to understand a title before you start reading the poem. So just looking at the title, The Charge of the Light Brigade. We need to break down a few words here. First off, the word brigade. So a brigade, if I have any military folk out there, you probably already know this, that is a unit of soldiers. So a light brigade would be a unit of soldiers that's not armed with heavy artillery. So they don't have a whole bunch of horses and cannons and, intense things like that. Now, brigade is not a term that's used very often nowadays. It was used more commonly back in the days when this poem was written, which was, 19th century. So now that we are in the 21st century, the term light brigade is not one I would expect you to be familiar with. But I'm sure, now that you know it is a unit of soldiers, you can guess what it means for them to be charging. So, a unit of soldiers charging into battle. So, that should already give you some clues about what's going to be happening in this poem here. So, let's take a look at the poetry. Okay, so The Charge of the Light Brigade by Lord Alfred Tennyson was written about a battle from many years ago. So I'll read through it first and then define some words that I commonly get asked about, and then see if you can start to make some connections and get the big picture. So, The Charge of the Light Brigade. Half a league, half a league, half a league onward, all in the valley of death rode the 600. Forward, the light brigade, charge for the guns, he said. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Forward, the light brigade. Was there a man dismayed? Not though the soldier knew someone had blundered. Theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die. Into the valley of death rode the 600. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon in front of them, volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell. Boldly they rode, and well, into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell, rode the 600. Flashed all their sabres bare, flashed as they turned in air, sabering the gunners there, charging an army, while all the world wondered. Plunged in the battery smoke, right through the line they broke, Cossack and Russian, reeled from the saber stroke, shattered and sundered. Then they rode back, but not the 600. Cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, cannon behind them, volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell, while horse and hero fell. They that had fought so well came through the jaws of death, back from the mouth of hell. All that was left of them, left of 600. When can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made! All the world wondered. Honor the charge they made. Honor the Light Brigade. Noble 600. All right. So since this is an older poem, there are quite a few words that I typically get asked about as we seek to understand the events that have happened in this battle. So, starting from the top, the first word that I'm going to define for you is usually one of the last words that I get asked about. Because a lot of people think that they know what this word means, but the context for this word is different from the usage that we have nowadays. So nowadays, when you think of a league, we think of a league as a group of people. So a lot of people assume that, a league, it must be referring to the brigade. It must be referring to this group of people. Incorrect. A league is a unit of distance. So if you've ever heard of the book title 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, it does not mean 20,000 groups of people under the sea. It is referring to the distance under the sea that the characters are in the book. So in this case, half a league, rather than 20,000 leagues, it's about 2 miles, if I recall correctly. So basically, when they say here, half a league, half a league, half a league onward, they're emphasizing the distance that these men are going. They are going miles and miles and miles onward towards death. So, emphasizing their dedication, their commitment to fighting this battle. Okay. Let's see. We've already talked about Brigade. Sometimes I'll get asked about dismayed. So dismayed is a pretty close synonym for disappointed or, feeling of regret. So in this case, was there a man dismayed? Was there a man who regretted coming to this battle? No, not even though the soldiers knew someone had blundered. So dismayed, that would be when someone is sad person. Blundered. Now, blundered is a whoopsie. So if you have blundered, you have messed up. So in this case, someone in this brigade has made a whoopsie. Even though someone has made a whoopsie, no one is regretting going forward. No one is trying to turn back or abandon the brigade or anything like that. They are carrying on. They are going forward. Theirs not to make reply. Theirs not to reason why. So no one was sitting around saying, well, I don't know why we're doing this. They were not questioning. They were just committed. All right. So that's some definitions from our first part there. Now, when we get into the third stanza, I'll often get asked about the word volleyed. So I'm sure you've seen in, an older battle, before the days of bombs and other sorts of things like that. Arrows, for example. If they shoot down, a rain of arrows, so many arrows coming down. That act of kind of mass, what's the word I'm looking like mass attack, that would be the volley. The volleys of arrows, these series of arrows or shots coming through the sky down upon them. There's cannons surrounding them. There's volleys of arrows or bullets or something coming down at them. But they ride on into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell. These fearless 600 soldiers. So the number of soldiers emphasized over and over again. 600, 600, 600. If we forget how many soldiers there are, we're not paying attention. All right. In the fourth stanza, sabers. So saber is just a fancy word for a sword. So a little pointy thing that you would use to stab somebody. That would be a saber, kind of an old school sword. So stabby stabby. What other words? Cossack, sometimes I'll get asked about. So just like the word Russian, Cossack is describing someone's nationality. So Cossack used to be a term to describe someone from Eastern Europe, like in the area of like the Ukraine. So areas next to Russia, but not quite in Russia, perhaps. So the people who are fighting these battles are fighting against Cossacks and Russians. They are fighting against these Eastern European forces. Okay, let's see. Reeled, sometimes I'll get asked about, the act of kind of falling back as if someone is attacking you. So the Cossacks and the Russians are causing them to reel back from all the swords. Shattered and sundered is like broken apart. So their forces seem to be disintegrating. They're being overpowered, and those 600 men do not ride back. Whee! Okay. Next up, stanzas 5 and 6. Don't know if we have any crazy new terms here. Nope. Every once in a while, someone will ask me why honor is spelled like that, and it's because this author is a British author, and they spell words differently over there sometimes, but yeah, it's about all we got. So, we have 600 men riding into battle, totally overpowered, and bad things happen to them. So, that's kind of the conclusion we get from defining all of these sort of old school terms here. Okay, now, you may be asking yourself, this poem sounds awful familiar. I wonder where I've heard it before. Even if you're not asking yourself that, you may actually have heard this poem. The reason that I say that is because there is an appearance of this poem in a movie that you may or may not have seen. If you haven't seen it, I strongly recommend, if you got a little time to kill, I am going to show you a clip that is already on YouTube, so I'm not infringing on any copyright things here. And it is a clip from the movie The Blind Side. Some of you may recognize the actor who plays Michael Orr in that movie. So The Blind Side, lovely movie, football movie, very engaging, based on a true story. So Michael Orr is an actual person who has this crazy life story, is pretty much homeless and, struggling horribly. And this family really proactively, takes him in, takes care of him, and, ends up making him part of their family. Now, since he went through that period of life struggle, he's had, some issues. His schooling hasn't been consistent and stuff like that. And in this scene from The Charge of the Light Brigade, he has to write a paper for English class. Dun dun dun! And his paper has to be analyzing a particular piece of literature. And the piece of literature that he chooses to write his paper about is The Charge of the Light Brigade. So in this clip, Michael Orr's foster father, played by the lovely Tim McGraw, is explaining the poem to him. And he tries to explain it in a way that Michael can understand. So as he's talking about these soldiers charging into battle, he compares it to football players charging for the end zone, going forward, even though a terrible mistake has been made. So, anyways, I will let you view that clip at your leisure. And if you have time to view the whole movie, go for it. Great movie. Strongly recommend. But yeah, so hopefully that will help with any other kind of clarity issues you may have, or maybe it will just be some fun and entertainment. So the next thing I want to talk about before I leave you to it is the questions that I'm going to ask you about. A lot of times people will ask me, what these little things in parentheses are. This is just me trying to remind you about what kind of skills I'm looking for you to develop in this class. So by now, hopefully you've identified some strengths and some weaknesses in terms of your skills. So when you see a skill that you know is something you need to be working on, then hopefully you would, take special care with that question. So RA is your reading analysis skill. RD is reading diction, where you're looking at word choice. RS is reading syntax, where you're looking at sentence structure, so on and so forth. So anyways, if you have particular questions about those skills, let me know. But let me just go over a few trouble questions real quick. For number one, just make sure you give me some detail. If your answer is like 2 words, that's not detailed enough. So really give me the most detailed summary that you can of what exactly is being described in this poem. It is a poem, but it's also telling a story. Give me the details of the story. For number 2, try and get as descriptive as you can with the tone words. Go beyond basic. If you tell me like positive or negative, that's way, way too vague. That's so big. There's so many words that could be inside of that one word. Try and get more specific. And then for words that help create this tone, I do mean words from the actual poem. So I should see like some quotation marks, and you should be telling me, well, when the author says blah, 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 and blah, 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 that makes the tone feel like blah, 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 and, tell me what the tone of the poem is. So specificity and some support for that. For number 3, when I say 2 examples of repetition, first off, remember repetition is when you have a word or a phrase that repeats, so it's in there more than once. So if you tell me one phrase that repeats, that's one example. So the second example will be a different phrase that repeats. Sometimes people think because repetition is saying something twice that the one thing is the 2 examples, but no. 2 separate examples of repetition. And then make sure that you answer the second part of the question. What is the effect? You can either tell me the effect of both of them together, or you can just tell me separate. Well, the effect of this repetition is that it's meant to make the audience feel this way, and the effect of this repetition is to emphasize this thing. So give me some effects for your repetition. Same thing here with personification. If you're having trouble finding personification, take a look in the third stanza, I believe it is, to kind of hone in on your search, and make sure to tell me the effect. How does it make the audience think or feel? That is effect. Okay, 5, connections. So think about themes, think about characters. In what way is the struggle of these men similar to something from the book? So tell me about a character, tell me about a circumstance, tell me a theme. Think about the themes that we talked about. I gave you 6 themes, and we came up with lots of examples for them. You should be telling me one of those themes. Okay, number 6, rhyme. So I'm sure most of you know what rhyme is. You know, when the same kind of sound is at the end of a line. Poem and home. You know, some kind of the same sound. That was a bad rhyme. Cat and hat. That's better rhyme. So anyways, is there rhyme in the poem? That's a yes or a no. Give me 2 examples. Now, obviously, if I'm asking you for 2 examples, you can probably guess what the answer to this question is. And then, does the poem have a rhyme scheme? If you have ever, in any of your classes before, done a kind of looking for pattern in rhyme, sometimes teachers will have you put like letters next to the lines, like A, B, A, B, you know, to indicate that, like, well, this third line rhymes with the first line, and this fourth line rhymes with the second line, you know, so a pattern like that. So if you can find a consistent pattern, you know, A, B, A, B, or A, B, C, A, B, C, or A, A, B, B, or, you know, whatever, then there is a rhyme scheme. So the answer to that would be yes. If you can't find a consistent pattern, if it's A, B, C, A, E, D, I mean, if it's all over the place, then it is not a rhyme scheme. So just because there's rhyme in the poem doesn't necessarily mean there is rhyme scheme. Okay, I think that's all I have to describe to you. I will let you get to the poetry and let me know if you have questions.